Hey everybody, this is Kyle Bodie with Driveline Baseball. Today I want to talk a little bit about some advanced pitching mechanics, specifically pronation and pronating your curveball. This video is not going to talk about your basic pitching mechanics or stuff you can learn from a book or anything stupid like that. If you need to learn about drop and drive, tall and fall, or stride length, or stride speed, or force vector, or any of that stuff, I highly recommend you pick up some books on the topic. Today we're going to be going into deep detail. You'll probably need a copy of Gray's Anatomy or something like that to really discuss the kinesiological effects here. It's not really meant to be a beginner's thing, but it's a follow-up to Trevor Bauer's video where he discussed his pitch design. And what I thought he did a very good job of is illustrating the arm path, and he talked a little bit about it, and I wanted to go into more detail for the guys that wanted a really scientific, deep look into it. So that's kind of the genesis of that. So a little bit about me is that I'm the owner of Driveline Baseball in Seattle, Washington. We're now in Puyallup. We have several hundred clients, past and present, high school, college, pro, a couple young kids as well. That picture is of Trevor on the left, Jack McGarry second from the left, me, and then Ryan Chapman. It's not too hard to figure out who's not the professional athlete there. So some thoughts on pronation. So what is pronation? Really all it is turning the thumb down. So thinking about taking your pitching hand and turning the thumb down and rotating the forearm in such a way immediately towards the body. Now the issue is that that's not really what it is when it comes to pitching. It's not that simple. It's not a single joint exercise or a single joint movement. Although, medically that's exactly what it is. It's inexorably linked to internal rotation, and we'll get into that in a little bit. It was first brought to the forefront by Dr. Mike Marshall, who won the Cy Young with the Dodgers. You may remember he has some awesome relief pitching records that'll never be broken. He's also kind of a crazy pitching theorist. His theories were that pronation would help create a gap in the elbow, would help engage the muscles of the medial forearm and protect the ulnar collateral ligament, and it would also reduce the amount of collisions with the ulna with the ulna and the olecranon fossa. So it would reduce hyaline cartilage fractures and ulnar fractures, bone chips, that kind of stuff. Stuff that you might go see Dr. Kremchek for. It turns out that he's actually, there's a lot of peer-reviewed research that shows he's probably pretty correct in those, and that was 30 years ago. He was basically guessing while looking at high-speed video. So it's actually pretty impressive. So how much do we believe in it, and how do we teach it? So that's a picture from a video of someone using 10-pound wrist weights on their hand to train the hand driving over the elbow, which is a great cue from Chris Holt. So thanks for that, Chris. And learning how to engage pronation and internal rotation. So, like I said before, pronation is not simply turning the thumb down. It is inexorably linked to the shoulder. And so the elbow and shoulder are married. It's a good way to think about it. So supination, giving someone a thumbs up, it allows for ideal external rotation. And external rotation is simply that high cock position, the arm is laying back. That's, what external rotation is of the shoulder. And internal rotation drives pronation. And so what's important to understand here is that ideal external rotation and scapular tilt and everything that allows the arm to lay back is inexorably linked to supination. And so as we internally rotate from a fully maximally supinated position, we get a fair amount of pronation as a result of the unwinding due to internal rotation. A great resource on this is just the word torque and understanding the drive. And Dr. Kelly Starrett talks a lot about it in Becoming a Supple Leopard, which is a book that I didn't buy based on the title alone for a long time. And that was a mistake. Dr. Starrett's book is excellent and talks, although it has nothing to do with baseball, it talks a lot about creating torque and understanding that externally rotated supinated position being a position of power, and one that we want to initiate movement from and not end up in. The most commonly taught curveball or slider involves supinating through release, or turning the doorknob, or pulling the lampshade down, or karate chopping the ball. And if your pitching coach tells you this, he's stupid and doesn't understand that that's really not the way that you should be throwing breaking pitches. Or you can throw it that way, but it actually limits the amount of rotation you get on it, which sets a ceiling on the amount of break, and it also is pretty unhealthy on the elbow. So this kind of ties into the adequate coaching. So anyone can say just look like Greg Maddux. That's not very helpful, and that's basically what most people do when they say, they take video of you, and the advanced guys will take video of you and put it next to Greg Maddux or Tim Lincecum or Roger Clemens or whoever they want. And they'll say, "Oh, you need to get closer to Greg Maddux, you need to get closer to Roger Clemens, you need to get closer to Lincecum or whatever, and here's what he does, and here's what you do, and here's how you can get closer." So that's about the most useful advice you can get from a traditional pitching coach. Most people aren't even that advanced. But the problem is that you aren't Greg Maddux and you're not Tim Lincecum. And so trying to get movement in the same way that they do, trying to, even from a video perspective, is very misleading, because from a kinesiological aspect, your muscles fire different than theirs, your anatomical structure is different than theirs. And so what you need to do is figure out how to engage the muscles like they do, and to create a similar mapping situation to give, hopefully the command of Greg Maddux with the velocity of, the University of Washington version of Tim Lincecum. I mean, that would be a pretty good pitcher. And so you have to understand that training external rotation plus supination into internal rotation plus pronation is not a singular thing. It's not one of these things that's very easy to do. It requires a multimodal training effect. And any pitching coach that tells you it's simple, or the common criticism of Trevor is he overthinks things. Well, pitching is actually pretty complicated. It's not one of these things where it's just like, oh, you got to find a target and you throw strikes and yada yada. Well, if it was that easy, we'd all throw 90 miles an hour and we'd all throw strikes. The problem is it's not that easy. So let's get over the fact that it's hard, and let's kind of look into that and embrace the challenge. So Trevor's had some command issues. There's no secret about that. In 2013, we started working together in the midway part of the season. His postural shift had altered the axis of rotation of all of his pitches. Basically, what happened is he switched the posture from a upright posture, or a big spinal tilt posture, like a Lincecum-esque posture, Chris Young, Josh Colementor type posture, to a more of a classic posture. This isn't bad or good. It's just a decision that he decided to make for reasons that aren't worth discussing here. And unfortunately, that changes how you apply force to the baseball, or it destroys your feel, basically. And so you can see at the bottom those pitch effects graphs from TexasLeaguers.com. You can see on the left is 2012 and on the right is 2013. And so Trevor always has two different clusters of pitches, because he pitches off both sides of the mound depending on the pitches he throws, and depends on the hitters. For more information on that, you should really check out Perry Husband's Effective Velocity stuff, hittingasaguess.com. But the problem is that Trevor knew that he made this change, but he didn't make an adjustment. So pitchers just don't do what they think they're going to do. So, if you look at Trevor's UCLA stats, or stats really, before he's had these issues, command is really not a problem for him, and it never has been. So it's not one of these things where he's just, he hasn't figured it out or whatever. It's just that when you do the same thing and apply force to the baseball that you always have over the past few years, yet you've changed one major thing, it's going to cause, bad command, you can't throw strikes, yada, 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 even though it feels exactly the same way. So command is not what you think it is. It's not focus on a target and you throw to it and yada, yada, yada. No, command is way more complicated than that. It's not simple. Again, baseball's not simple, and pitching and throwing 95 and spotting it up is not simple. So it's a lot more complicated than that. I'm not going to get into too much of that, but we'll talk a little bit more about it going on. Okay, so this is Trevor's pull versus drive curveball. So in 2013, he shifted his posture away from that picture that you see at UCLA. And you see he's presetting his karate chop motion. That's the curveball that he threw at UCLA. It's a great effect. But the problem is when he flattened out his posture, it causes him to pull his curveball almost like a slider, or like a really bad cutter. It's what I immediately noticed when I looked at his AAA footage online. So how do we fix it? Okay, so we used wrist weights to help remap that arm path, and really help them understand the marriage of, again, external rotation plus maximal supination to internal rotation plus pronation. What Trevor was taught is that you set the arm, you preset it, and then of course you're going to pronate after release or through release from a neutral hand position. You'll see his hand is in a neutral position. It looks like it's supinated, but in reality it is supinated with the thumb up, but it's not maximally supinated. It's from a neutral position and pronate after the pitch. And that's not, if he wants the maximum amount of rotation, that's not exactly the best way to go about it. The best way to go about it is to think about driving the back of the hand to the plate from an occipital way of thinking about a straight path to the plate with flexion in the elbow. And you'll see Trevor has flexion in the elbow as a result of being taught some of the drills that Ron Wolforth teaches at the Texas Baseball Ranch. And that's a great way to achieve that straight drive line to the plate. And so then the difference was night and day after we worked together when he came to Seattle and we trained. He really had a good feel for the drills that we do, and using the overload, underload implements, primarily the overload implements, understanding how to use the 2 and 4 pound balls to get that feel, the glove separation, the scapular separation, how to avoid the concept of glove blocking, which is another, just like a Tom House NPA teach, that's just totally counterproductive. How to get away from the concept of equal and opposite, which is another not useful cue in my opinion. And the curveball now, he worked over 2 months on this, and you can go see his video, but I've cut the curveball video so you can see it, and that's a pretty darn good curveball. It's got significantly more drop. If you compare his curveball online, you can check YouTube. He's uploaded 420 frames per second video of his the release, and it's significantly different than it is now. And it's just a testament to how hard he's worked on this. And you could see, even from 30 frames per second here, you can see that the arm path is a very occipital-driven, straight to the plate pitch, and it's just got massive break, and it's just a great curveball. It's very exciting. And so it's understanding that unwinding of the arm again. So some people have posited that unwinding the arm from external to internal rotation and supination and pronation is natural. Well, my rebuttal to that is getting eaten by lions is natural. I mean, that's not a reasonable argument that this is natural, that pitchers do this, that this is something you see in all pitchers. Because I'll tell you what, there's plenty of 11-year-old pitchers who do not pronate through release. And there's plenty of just people who throw that don't pronate through release. I mean, it happens all the time. You see it all the time if you're looking for it. Yeah, guys who throw 95 or Clemens or whatever, they all pronate after release, but they're evaluating this based on 25 or 30 frames per second video and not really understanding the kinesiological effect of actual pronation rather than this passive pronation, and then the arm is slowing down. Of course, everybody pronates after release. That's the whole point. The pronator teres and the pronator quadratus are there to slow the arm down. So yeah, obviously that happens, but that's totally missing the boat on what's actually happening. So this is the 1,000 frames per second video that Trevor shot, and you can really see that he's pointing the middle knuckle basically to the plate in the first couple frames of the shot, and he's just getting massive, just an excellent arm path. His forearm is almost inside vertical. He's driving the arm to the plate, and he has massive pronation after release. It's just an excellent job, and really a testament to remapping this. He says from the drills that we do, he's able to get even better supination to pronation unwinding, and I look forward to seeing that. But this is a pretty darn good effort right here. So active versus passive pronation. So active pronation is generally just not a good idea, right? It runs contrary to Dr. Marshall's ideas where you want to turn the hand over intentionally. But really all that's doing is it's engaging the pronator teres, the pronator quadratus, and the flexor digitorum superficialis. And it's a great way to slow the arm down prematurely. So if you want to throw 80 miles an hour, it's great. It works great. You're contracting the medial forearm bundle, so the pronator flexor mass, and that really inhibits forearm layback. So if you do it out of sequence, you're going to get really poor dynamic external rotation, and that's not what we want. But then again, passive pronation isn't correct either. That's the pronation is natural, garbage. Just like king cobras are natural, but I don't see people jumping into pits with king cobras either. The ideal pattern is somewhere in the middle. It requires a really strong medial forearm bundle built with wrist weights, overload implements, and a map that goes with it, and a smart motor units that fire properly. It's kind of like the rotator cuff. You don't want a bulky rotator cuff if such a thing exists. You want a rotator cuff that fires intelligently and keeps the glenohumeral socket all together. And so you want both. You want it to be strong and smart. And it requires a good understanding of the arm path, and that's built through overload implements and understanding a mapping of the arm. So occipital versus centripetal, I've said this a little bit. So occipital is acceleration towards the center of the target, whereas centripetal is acceleration towards the center of the origin. And so centripetal would be something like an extreme sidearm pitcher who releases the ball in line with their head, essentially. And so there's a lot of stress being applied perpendicular to the line of axis, or perpendicular to the line of force, whereas a pure occipital delivery is in theory what Dr. Marshall's clients do, but actually don't. A pure occipital delivery is almost like Josh Colemanter of the Diamondbacks, the straight over the top straight path that's thrown to the target rather than acceleration towards the center